The parallels between our first reading and our gospel today hint at a broader parallel in this part of the gospel. It seems that Luke wanted his readers to look at these early moments of the life of Jesus and to be reminded of the story of Samuel. The parallels begin with a name. The name of Samuel's mother, Hannah, comes from the Hebrew word for grace, reminding us of Mary, whom the angel in Luke said was full of grace. We also see in both cases the miraculous gift of a child when it seemed physically impossible. Hannah was barren and prayed fervently for a child at the temple in Shiloh, and Mary was a virgin. Both Hannah and Mary proclaim similar hymns of praise to God for the gift of their sons. Hannah said, "My heart exults in the Lord, and the bows of the mighty are broken." And Mary echoed, "My soul proclaims the greatness of the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Savior, and he has cast down the mighty from their thrones and lifted up the lowly." And God, of course, had big plans for both miraculous sons. Finally, in the passages we heard today, both Samuel and Jesus are taken to the temple, although for Samuel it was the temple in Shiloh, since the one in Jerusalem had not yet been built, and both are left there. While we often see the connections between Jesus and David, especially in this season, reminding us of Jesus' kingly role, these connections to Samuel, priest and prophet, remind us that Jesus is priest, prophet, and king. But it's worth pointing out today the notable difference between these accounts. Samuel is actually left in the temple at Shiloh. He grew up in the temple, serving Eli the priest. He was shown to be more attentive to God than Eli, even if less experienced. And he took over as high priest after Eli. Jesus, however, did not stay in the temple. He spent his formative years with Mary and Joseph. I imagine that for a reader familiar with Samuel reading Luke for the first time, this might seem like a strange twist. If the life of Samuel really did foreshadow the life of Jesus, why was Jesus not left in the temple in the service of God as Samuel was? First, a few insights to better understand our gospel. And I have to start with a little defense of Joseph and Mary. As I'm sure some of you have heard, for those visits to Jerusalem, men and women would travel separately, and children could travel in either group. So it seems that both Mary and Joseph thought that Jesus was with the other group and didn't discover the error until they reunited in camp after the first day of travel. The second thing that cannot be overlooked in our gospel is exactly how profound this statement is. He was obedient to them. St. Bernard of Clairvaux put it well. God, to whom angels submit themselves and who principalities and powers obey, was subject to Mary, and not only to Mary, but Joseph also for Mary's sake. God obeyed a human creature. This is humility without precedent. A human creature commands God. It is sublime beyond measure. And one final note on this part of Luke's gospel as a whole. Luke was certainly not trying to undermine the importance of the temple. Because the infancy narrative, the title for these first 2 chapters of Luke, starts and ends in the temple. At the start, the angel appears to Zechariah in the temple to announce the coming birth of John the Baptist. And at the end, Mary and Joseph find Jesus in the temple. So why wasn't Jesus left in the temple after the pattern of Samuel? There are numerous insights from this moment of the life of our Savior, but I think the one that's worth our reflection on this feast is how it points to what the fathers of the church called the domestic church. One day Jesus would leave his home to embrace his calling, the way Samuel left his home. But at this point, the years spent under the care and authority of Mary and Joseph remind us that true worship of God needs to be rooted in every home and within every family. This is certainly not meant to undermine the importance of the temple back then or the physical church today. In a real sense, it is meant to emphasize it and to extend its impact. In our second reading, John marvels at the realization that by baptism we are God's children. We are part of his family. We are made sons and daughters of God so that we are more like Jesus in his words today than we might realize. Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house? An interesting point of reflection for this feast of the Holy Family is that when we measure today the size of a Catholic church, we don't count individual members, we count families. The building blocks of our parishes are families. In his letter to families, Pope John Paul II wrote, "The Holy Family is the beginning of countless other holy families." As Jesus returned from the temple to sanctify the home in Nazareth, we need to let him return home with us from this church in countless ways, to let him transform our families into better reflections of the Holy Family.